You're watching Fugitive Red-Eye, and I thought today I'd talk a little bit about how I got into The Simpsons. I briefly touched on this in my Simpsons Games Nostalgic Gaming Stories, but I also kind of want to talk about when I think The Simpsons Golden Age was, what my favorite Simpsons season is, and why, and a few other things. Since I just 100% hit and run on stream, I thought now is a good time to talk about The Simpsons, so here we go. So when I was much younger, I wasn't allowed to watch The Simpsons when I was a younger kid. I think that's really odd, because there's a lot of things that I was allowed to watch that were definitely worse. Certain R-rated movies, Underworld, The Matrix, maybe not worse than The Simpsons. It really depends on how you scale it. Neither of those were particularly egregious movies, but The Simpsons, I never really understood the reasoning why. Because I could watch Red Dwarf, and Red Dwarf has a ton of raunchy stuff in it. But for whatever reason, The Simpsons was off limits earlier on. Despite that, when we got an NES, which was the second console I ever had, the first being a PS1, then we went down to an NES. I know that's weird chronology, but that's how it happened. But one of the games we got on the NES was Bart vs. the World, and my parents let me play that because as I talked to them about it, I told them, look, it's an NES game, what could they really possibly do to make it bad? And so, of course, they let me play it. I really liked the game as a kid. I still do like it. It's really nostalgic for me. I know that a lot of people don't like that game, but I quite enjoy it. Later on, I would get The Simpsons Road Rage, and I would convince my parents to let me play it by telling them that, you know, it's just a Simpsons taxi service. It's just a taxi game with Simpsons characters. Don't worry about it. And of course, they're like, okay, fine. And then Hit and Run, when that came out, I was like, look, it's just the sequel to Road Rage. And they're like, okay, fine. It wasn't that long after I had played Hit and Run that they eventually just let us watch the show. I was probably like 12, maybe 11, when we could actually watch the show. I think I was 9 when Hit and Run came out. I was probably like 11 or 12 when we were actually finally allowed to watch it. But we would go and we would start buying seasons of the show. We got Season 2 first, then I believe it was Season 1, and then we would go on to get Season 4, Season 6, Season 10, and Season 8. I know it's really weird the order we ended up getting it in, but then we would later fill in the gaps of the ones we didn't have. Prior to me being allowed to watch it, however, while we were playing Hit and Run and stuff, I was of course still watching it, just secretly. What we would do is we would tape a bunch of episodes on an old VHS tape. We would label it some random thing. I don't even remember what we wrote. I think maybe we wrote cartoons or something on the tape label. But we would tape a bunch of episodes and we would watch them in secret when either my parents weren't home or we would watch them in the basement when they were upstairs. And if they'd come, we'd stop it and switch on the Xbox or something. Again, we would eventually be allowed to watch it and we would buy the seasons, as I said. When I would play Road Rage and Hit and Run, I would first play them on Dozermac's old PS2, because I didn't own them myself yet. I would later go on to get them myself for Xbox, and that has been primarily the way I've played them ever since, is on Xbox. When I would watch The Simpsons, we would watch it with the deleted scenes enabled, which meant that every time the deleted scene would be in an episode, there'd be this little scissor icon that popped up on screen, and if you hit enter or play fast enough, it would play the deleted scene, and then it would go back to the episode. It went back to the spot before the scissors popped up, so, you know, you would see a couple of seconds replay after each deleted scene, but that's how I like to watch the show, because when I was younger especially, I used to be really big on watching all the special features on every DVD set I owned. Same with my Red vs. Blue sets, I'd always watch the bonus features on those, and with every movie I'd watch the deleted scenes too, so it was really cool to me that Simpsons let you watch the episodes and play the deleted scenes where they would have been. I loved that. It was a big draw to me when watching The Simpsons, and that's still my preferred way to watch it, but as I mentioned in a previous video, DVD Glitches, which was an episode of Random Thoughts, which this almost was, but I think this is enough to be its own thing. But as I said, in DVD Glitches, you can't actually do that on the Xbox Series X, and presumably the Xbox One as well. Because, you know, the primary way I watch DVDs and Blu-rays now is on the Xbox Series X, and then when I want to watch a import, I'll typically watch it on the PS5, and then when I'm watching DVDs for Red Eye Theater, I'll watch them on my computer. Unfortunately, with the inputs, since we don't currently have a region-free player and we're just using a PS5, it's currently set to Region 2. You can only change it a certain number of times. So we can't watch Region 4, and I have plenty of things in Region 4 and a couple of things in Region 3. Again, I do have VLC on my computer, so I can watch anything on that. With Blu-rays, I'm stuck to Region A. But anyway, that's a tangent. Back to The Simpsons. We would go on to eventually get every Simpsons set that came out. For a while, that was only seasons 1 through 17 and season 20. Eventually, when 18 and 19 came out, I did buy them as well. A bit of a tangent, but the season 20 case is absolute garbage. It's like completely falling apart on mine. Like, I don't even keep half the discs in it anymore. I have them in the Simpsons Hit and Run case, on a disc stack, and a few other places because it's just such a bad case and it just falls apart because it's all just made of cardboard. But anyway, as everyone agrees, The Simpsons did eventually get bad. When that is depends on who you ask. For me, I'd say seasons 1 through 10 is the golden age. I know some people are less generous than that. Some people say 2 through 8. Some people say 2 through 9. Some say 1 through 9. Some say 1 through 8. I say 1 through 10. Nice even number. I think that's the golden age of the show. I think that's when it's at its peak. You could argue that it started to decline somewhere in season 9. Most people cite the principal and the pauper. I think the show was still really good after that, even though that episode itself is pretty fucking egregious with the way that it ends. Although it's considered non-canon now, so who cares? Plus, it's a cartoon, so I just deal with it, you know? Plus, there's elements I like about the episode. The episode's not overall terrible. It's just, you know, kind of bullshit for the character of Seymour Skinner. But after season 10, that's the end of the golden age for me. But I still really like the show from, like, 11 on. I think the last season that I like is season 20. I think it declines increasingly with every season after 10, but I still enjoy 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, all the way to 20. And I remember that I was still watching like 21, 22, and 23 as they were coming out. I was still watching them and enjoying them to a degree, but I could definitely tell it was hollow and a shell of its former self. The episode that I realized it was bad, actually, was Treehouse of Horror 22, which was that one that had Homer as like a crippled Spider-Man. And that's the only segment I remember from it, to be honest. So season 23 was the moment when I realized that it really fucking shit the bed. That said, I'm perfectly content that only seasons 1 through 20 have a DVD release, because that is what I consider the part of the show worth watching. The Simpsons movie is also great. We saw it in theaters when it came out. That was fucking great. We actually had a bootleg of it that was one of those shitty, like, filmed-in-theater bootlegs, which I gave away to a friend years and years ago, back when I was younger. I want to say it was in, like, middle school that I gave it to him. But then we eventually got an actual real DVD copy as well. Now, as to which season I think is the best. For me, my favorite season of all time is season 2. It's the first season I ever owned, so there's probably some pretty serious nostalgia there. I remember it was given to me as a birthday present one year, because I was finally allowed to watch the fucking show. Like I said, I think I was 11 or 12. And the reason we started with season 2 is because that's the one they had at Walmart at the time when we were shopping there. But the reason I say season 2 is the best for a couple of reasons. Number one, I just really like the episodes. They're all classics. But number two, there's a very distinct feel that season 2 has that you don't really get with a lot of the rest of the series. There's a lot more heart, a lot more heartfelt moments. There's like family tragedy. There's kind of the warm fuzzies. Kind of the sappy stuff is what I like about it, which is kind of funny because I'm not typically the sentimental type, but I really love the sweet and sad family moments that are in season 2, and you don't really get a feel of that basically anywhere else in the series, at least not to the same degree. There's a little bit of it here and there, right? Like season 7 has Marge Be Not Proud, which is also one of my favorite episodes. That one's really good. And season 3 has When Flanders Failed, which was actually written during season 2. So it just feels like a season 2 episode. But I love that. Like, I love Old Money. A lot of people don't like Old Money. I fucking love that episode. I love the tragedy in it. I love how sad it is. I love Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? We get to see Homer's half-brother Herb, played by Danny DeVito. And the sad resolution that episode has, which granted, there's a little bit of a happier resolution in Season 3 with Brother Can You Spare Two Dimes. Season 2 also introduced us to the Treehouse of Horror as a yearly tradition, and while the first Treehouse of Horror is by far not my favorite, that's easily got to go to Treehouse of Horror 5 from Season 6, which is my overall favorite episode, by the way. Treehouse of Horror 5 is fucking great. But in addition to that, Season 2 also fleshed out Springfield a lot. Characters finally started to come into form and look like they would for the rest of the series. The town was getting expanded. We got to see a lot more characters. We got to kind of have an idea of where things are, what the family's kind of routine was. And overall, it really started to feel like a world in Season 2. It really started to take shape, I think. So yeah, there's just a couple of factors that go into me loving Season 2. Again, nostalgia's definitely part of it. I love the sappy shit. They feel like a family. There's a lot of family moments. The town's fleshed out. It introduced us to Treehouse of Horror. All the episodes themselves are classics. So, Season 2 really just is where Simpsons is fucking best for me. So that's overall what my favorite season is. I would say that my favorite characters, probably, Homer is definitely up there. Mo was my favorite as a kid. Still might be. I kind of flip-flopped back and forth between Homer and Mo. Mo is definitely my favorite, side character. And Homer is definitely my favorite Simpson family member, although Abe is also really great. Bart can be pretty cool, too. It really just depends. Honestly, the show has such a great cast of characters. Fat Tony, Sideshow Bob, Hans Moleman, Mr. Burns, Ned Flanders. I mean, everybody loves Ned Flanders, right? Hens love roosters, geese love ganders, everyone else loves Ned Flanders. And with the early episodes of The Simpsons, too, you get to see a bit of the culture that we don't have anymore. We get to see what American life was like back in the good old days. And obviously it's not the good old days, because it's not like 50s Americana, which, is a whole other thing that was also great. But the world that I grew up in kind of no longer exists, and revisiting old Simpsons episodes allows me to sort of recapture that and get to kind of experience the culture I grew up in, because it's fucking dead. And I'm not going to turn this into a whole cynical rant, because that was already a thing, but that's another thing that The Simpsons does very nicely, is lets me get a nice reminder of, to a degree, what life is like. Obviously it's a cartoon, there's a lot of ridiculousness, but The Simpsons was also fairly grounded. It got a little wackier, starting with, Season 5. Season 5's kind of out there with some of the crazy shit that happens. And then, later seasons get even more zany. But, early on, The Simpsons was relatively grounded. It wasn't, King of the Hill grounded, but it was more grounded than, Family Guy or South Park. But those shows were classics when I was growing up, too. This is a little bit rambly. It's sort of a Simpsons review. I'm going to put this in my TV show reviews playlist. Almost a random thoughts. I even went off on a few tangents. But I was trying to kind of do a video solely focused on The Simpsons, how I got into it, why it was great, when it got bad, and what I think is the best part. The Simpsons is a phenomenon. It's part of the culture. Back in the day, it was everywhere. There was merchandise, there were video games, there were comics. It was fucking everywhere. And I sort of have an obsession with blue shirt Bart merch. I don't know why. If you don't know, a lot of the old Bart Simpson merchandise had him with a blue shirt, which he has never worn in the show ever. Blue shirt Bart has always been sort of a thing that I always like to have merch of. I only currently have a sticker of it that was made way later, but I do want to get more blue shirt Bart merch. I don't know why. I also want to collect some of the old figures, kind of, for nostalgia's sake, because I remember they had, Handsome Mo and the ingestible Bulk, which was, Homer just painted green. Now, The Simpsons is a cultural phenomenon. It needs to fucking die already. I've heard some people say that, season 35 is actually really good. I saw a video about this guy, Larry, one of the barflies, who died, and it was actually it seemed like an interesting episode, I'm not gonna lie. I might check that episode out just because I liked sort of the description that I was given of it. But nevertheless, even if the show is good again, at this point I don't have a whole lot of interest in watching it, just because once the spark is dead, it's hard for me to get reinvested into something, just like with South Park. But that said, I've rambled on enough. I love The Simpsons. Like I said, I only think about 20 seasons are worth actually owning. But there it is, that's my thoughts. Hope you guys enjoyed. Have a good one. Toodles.
You take forever to say nothing.
Subscribe, the Fidgety Red Eye.